Right. A very warm welcome back to the Soul System Success Talk with myself, Rasheed Ogunlaru.
And I'm Julio Graham, business consultant and business coach.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this talk. Really excited about this talk, Julia. I can't tell you. Our very first talk was around soul. I was talking about, soul means so many different things to people. Heart, and being authentic. It is that kind of the intangible, the spiritual for some people. It is that sense of flow. It's that sense of wholeness. It means so many different things to so many people. And then we talked about system.
Now, in the system talk, I think we touched on the fact that we're all part of a system, and that once you sort of put on your system's glasses, so to speak, you get to see a whole bunch of things. So it's not just direct causality. There may be things further upstream that cause a whole bunch of problems for you.
And then we're into success. Now, lots of people, they seek you out, or they seek me. They want success. I wonder if it's worth us beginning to explore what success is. And it may be to explore what it is from both from a soul perspective and from a systems perspective. I mean, for me, in terms of success, when I'm sitting with people, working with people, success is going to mean so many different things to so many different people. There's often a pressure because often we're told that this is what success is, or you should aspire to be this or that. Which sometimes one needs to run by their heart and to be what is actually authentic and what is actually true to me. Then you might even be watching this, and even the word success may not chime with you from a soul perspective because it's far more about fulfillment and being authentically yourself. One thing that I want to throw into the mix, maybe to start off with as regarding success, Julia, is that I'll say to people that success is dependent on so many things. You, your talent, how hard you are prepared to work, how inspired, how motivated you are, your resources, your resourcefulness, your environment, your surroundings, your creativity, etc. The economy, it's success, the weather even, depending what you're doing. It may come, it may well go. There may well be so many different factors that shape it. You only need to look at athletes and you can see that is the case. From your perspective, where do you want to kick us off with success and what it is?
I think for me, success is all about your context. So success for one person, and we see this often in our modern world, success for one person is not necessarily success for other people. So contextually, what does success mean to you? But even more important than your context, I think, is how do you measure success? So what are your measures of success? Which then goes back to your measures of performance. I mean, for an athlete, let's take an amateur athlete, to be able to run a mile under the 4 minutes,
Yes.
I think must be the most amazing achievement. But for a top athlete to be able to run a mile under 4 minutes is a must. So what's your context? What is your context of success? And this is where I think we're going to find that there's a very good mix of, you were talking earlier about the fact that people might be very materialistic, or people might be very spiritual, and we perceive those as being at the ends of two spectrums. It doesn't necessarily have to be. Contextually, it could be that you can be spiritually, solely, I'm
solely,
just using
yes.
very fulfilled, and capitalistically or financially or socialistically very you can these we talk about paradox in an earlier video, and I think these paradoxes are definitely very, very, very real.
Well, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that, because I think in the world that we live today, I mean, the context, I guess, of these videos, and we were just chatting a bit about this before we just started to film today's talk around success. The context today is the world, perhaps on one level, it's fast than ever. People have busy lives, they have busy minds. The world is changing, global economy, technology, social media, all of this kind of stuff. It's a very 24/7 world. And lots of people will be working in systems that often can be changing, they can be very challenging. People often feel overwhelmed by the system, or they're escaping the system to set up their own business, or that they're challenging the system in some way, shape or form. Leadership, all of these different elements that we've been talking about in these are perhaps at a point where they're at their height in terms of people's consciousness, or their subconscious that they're wrestling with or struggling with. So I like that element that they don't need to necessarily be extremes, because of course what you often get is where you get the people who perhaps are far more systems thinking, they're logical, they're pragmatists and so on, and then a conflict between the people who are far more people, or maybe them that they would perceive themselves to be more soulful, spiritual, artistic, creative, whatever language you want to put around it. But increasingly, actually, for example, if I take a lot of the industries that I've worked in, if somebody wants to work in the music business, you've got two different things. You've got the music, and then you've got the business. So you've got those two things. You've got the system and then you've got the soul.
Yes.
And you've got to be able to bring them together. And again, in business, isn't it? You've got people and you've got processes and structures that you have got to be able to align. And often the struggle, isn't it, is that people can't align them, so the leader doesn't understand this or the staff don't understand the system. And I see it in so many, I just need to turn on the TV and see within organisations where this train company and the operators is wrestling with these people, this political party wrestling here, all around the world. So what's your take on that?
Well, I mean, you've touched on something which I think is very, very important for me, is we have the short-term view of the world. We have quarterly reports that come out in the business world. We have, I've got an extra 50 likes today. Our whole world is being pushed.
Yes.
And the thing is, these things that we are measuring, are they the true measurements? So I'm coming back to that.
I like
or are
that.
these things just outputs which are supposed to contribute to an outcome?
I like what you're saying
about the outcome.
I like what you're saying here, Julia, because I think that then I think what that jumps out to me. Then when it comes to success, let's take, if we're looking at we're filming this here out of the UK. There have been changes, a lot of political changes very recently. One of the things that strikes me is that, okay, what does success actually look like? What would success actually look like for a country? Do you have an organisation of 5 years? Do you have a 20, for a country, you need to have, to my mind, you need to have a 20, a 30 year, a 50 year perhaps view of some of the things that you might need to put in place. If it comes to certain infrastructural things, what's the needs of the people, what's the demographic and so on. I'm no politician, but I can see that. I don't need to be a politician to be able to figure that one out. But I like the fact that you often highlight that sometimes our world becomes more constricted. And of course, then even within politics, people are then within a party political or the election system,
yes,
which is a system within a system that may constrict us to be thinking, actually, for me, success is just about 5 years, because then I need to be within this year showing this, so that public are showing that. So is your invitation for people to step back and take a broader, again, like you were talking in the systems talk, a broader view of actually what actually is success? What does it actually look like? And then what are those different measures there?
Yes. So I link success to an outcome,
right, yes,
of a system. So if we take the political system, I mean, essentially, is the outcome you want to be elected, or is the outcome you want to be able to make a change in the country?
Mm-hmm.
Because the two outcomes are very different.
They're very different.
Very different. So once you're clear about what your outcome is, so let's assume that the political party that wants to be elected, that would be an outcome in one way. But in some way, that would just be an output, because what they really want is they want to change the political landscape, they want to change the economic landscape, they want to make the country a better place for everybody to live in.
And that jumps into me from that, so the soul's point of that, what's that vision? Of course it's there very much. What is actually the vision? And again, within organisation, let's take about for organisations, is somebody clear about where the organisation is going, what that mission is there clarity around that? So again, on all these levels, it's really, really important. Actually, do I have clarity of what success actually looks like? What would success look like for me, for my business? Do I know or don't I know? I mean, sometimes somebody might genuinely not know, but it's important for one to begin to explore. And what would success look like for me? What would it look like for my clients? What would it look like for the stakeholders? What would it look like for the environment? What would it look like?
Then automatically what you're talking about there, you're already, there's your system. That you're defining a system of who needs to know what success is, who needs to know what your vision is. And then it's about communicating.
Right.
I mean, how are you communicating your vision? Because this is the biggest problem. Some of the greatest visionaries haven't managed to get their wonderful visions out there, because they just they don't know how to communicate. They haven't got a system of communication. They've got no idea of how to impact. And a lot of the time, it's because knowledge is once again tacit, held in the head instead of made explicit, and people don't understand. Some people are very detail driven. So, if you get a politician that's talking about the county council of somewhere that needs to save an extra 25 pence on stationery, that doesn't work for people who are in another county, etc. It's a bit like nitpicking. You've got to choose your level of communication. You've got to choose your level of granularity. So yes, when you're sitting and talking to a bunch of people who might be in the metal industry or in the car industry, who are going to be losing their jobs, or who are looking down the barrel of losing their jobs, absolutely, you're not going to talk about the cheese factories. You're going to talk about their problems. But likewise, when you move back, so once again, so if you look at these measures that we talk about, because a measure of performance or a measure of success, because we are talking about success, if you achieve your measurement, you're successful. But if you haven't got proper measurements and you don't understand what you're trying to achieve,
right? Yes.
And in what context? Once again, so I come back to the context thing. Contextually, are we trying to be a successful country? I mean, a lot of things. Let's take a look at this vote recently. The United Kingdom voted to leave the EU, and a lot of that vote was quite an emotional vote. And the complexity. I mean, even the politicians who were telling us leave, telling us stay, they didn't understand the whole thing of why we should stay, why we should leave. So they went and chose a few things, and honed in on those. And people chose out of the million things they could have, they chose 5 or 6 things.
Right. So for you as an expert, drawing on your expertise around systems as an international management consultant, it's essential that one steps back and looks at, again, what is success and what are those measures of success. I mean, for me, what jumps out for me, for example, I could have 2 levels. As the thing that jumps at my mind, for example, is about success. We happen to be filming this during the Olympics. And for a top athlete, it's absolutely clear what it is to win gold. And so therefore it's to win the gold, okay, how do I measure that? Well, blah, blah, blah. And there might be all sorts of different measures along the period of time of their training through to the end, them getting the gold medal. And then before, there might be times that they're wanting to do and achieve and so on. So what I like about that from an athlete's perspective is that then some of the system and some of the process things become very, very clear of what it is that I need to do. That one of the things that jumps out at me, Julia, from this talk is that as we move into success territory, that there may well be either systems work that I need to do on myself, or soul, let's call it broadly, soul work that I need to do on myself. So I might be watching this talk and thinking, okay, it's very interesting what you're talking about. Actually, I'm growing my business, but I'm not quite sure we've got some processes and in place. I think that there might be some training that, there's some systemic things that I need to do and I need to address. Or somebody might be watching this and think, actually, I'm not quite sure either I'm aligned to what I'm talking about or if I have that ability to really connect with people. Is that your hunch from these talks? Because I see people who often will need to do work at either side or both.
Well, yes, and I think my hunch really is that the process work that people need to do is just a small part of all of that system work they need to do. Right. It's amazing, there's this thing about knowledge. You don't know what you don't know, and then you know what you don't know, and then you know what you know, and then you practice what you know. So a lot of us who look at this world and think, well, there's a lot of chaos, there's a lot of stuff that's just happening. When you start looking at the world from a systems point of view, you suddenly know what you don't know. There's a whole bunch of things that you didn't know about your organization, about your behavior, about the economy, about all sorts of things. And so suddenly you've got a whole bunch of things you can learn about now. And that'll help with your success, because in terms of success, I mean, there are very many successful people who haven't got a clue about systems, who haven't got a clue about soul, or have a lot of soul or have a lot of system. So success doesn't hinge on getting these things right. But I think it hinges on making sure that from a contextual point of view, you know where you're going. How do you get people to follow you, or how do you lead people? Because just because people follow you doesn't mean you're a good leader. How do you get people, and what is the success there? And really, success becomes personal. And you talk about from a soulful point of view, how are we successful? If we talk about a business, people talk about profitability as being success. Oh, we're very profitable, so therefore we're successful.
It's just one. It's one measure, isn't it?
It's one measurement. How are we treating the environment? How are we treating our staff?
Right.
How are we treating the community within which we're working? All of those things may be measures of success.
Do your staff feel that you, and therefore do your staff feel you're successful? Do your customers feel that? It's really interesting, isn't it? Exactly. I think there's also something you said before that kind of struck me from the, if you like, the heart from the soul kind of perspective. That bit where you talk about where you know and where you don't know. There's a very powerful theme which almost seems like a paradox, almost like a contradiction, which is that the beautiful thing from the soul perspective is that often there's a powerful thing where there will be things that will be unknown to you, but there is no worry about. There are these invisible, intangible things that can't, on one level, be measured, but they have an impact. So, for example, and I wonder if there's a little bit that we might emerge in one of our future talks. So, in other words, if I am really aligned, if I am feeling very, very attuned, I'm in a space where I can be creative and stuff kind of happens. I can be very intuitive. I can deal with, there may be problems that I'm not quite sure the answers to, but I can be still, I can be very centered, and I get more clarity, or I'm able to deal with the unknown far more comfortably. So I can then deal with those things that aren't known to me, or that are constantly changed, or are yet unmanifest. That's one of the powers of success from the perspective of the soul, actually.
Yes.
Because you're aligned to yourself. So you might well be a business owner and there's change and you're wondering, shall I do this or shall I do that? Actually, you just become far more centered. You become far more aware. It's an attuneness. And I wonder, Julia, that this is again where it's aligned, that there's this thing about I have this saying that if you're quiet enough, life will whisper its secrets to you. So I wonder if you understand anything about that from a systems point of view, because it is kind of where it becomes a bit intangible, but it's important.
It does become intangible, but I think that as from a systems point of view, we don't ignore the human factor. So that's why I said to you earlier that you need to separate systems thinking from mechanical systems. Thinking about mechanical systems might be useful, but there are humans involved in this. And I mean, when you were talking now, and you're talking about someone being in tune and aligned, and those are the characteristics we're looking for someone who's going to be doing some of the systems thinking. Because when they're sitting there and we're looking for success now. So how do we measure success? Now, you notice I keep getting back to the measurement.
Yes.
The reason I ask the question is because when you ask somebody, how do you measure success? It makes them think about what is success. So in a business, in a business, yes, for the business to be viable, we need profitability. But our mission might be to sell beautiful electronic products to people. Or our mission might be to change the world for underprivileged people. Or our mission might be to be the best delivery company in the world. That's a mission. But at the same time, we also might want to be doing our work with integrity. We might want to be doing it with honesty. We might want to not be doing it with honesty. I mean, it's not. I know that's crazy, but there are organisations out there who exist for reasons that might not be.
Yeah, it might just be about the profit.
But it's a system and it works. And I think that when someone is in tune with what it is they want, if they then go out there and they communicate that with their staff and with their business, and they embed that in their business. So are they measuring the right things? Just because you're measuring how many customers you call a day, how is that helping you achieve your lifelong goal of being the best something?
I see.
So that is for me is the game that you play. Is that if you measure things, you will get performance in the areas you measure. So if you're not getting your vision or your mission, or you're not achieving your strategy, look at your measures, because your measures are going to help you get successful.
Yeah.
Your measures, and remember that you're measuring outputs. Don't confuse an output to an outcome.
Yes.
An outcome might be a multitude of outputs. And really, and then of course, once again, we get back to context.
Yes.
And then the context there really, and this is where it really chimes well for me, is the context there is that if you've got a leader who has changed his vision or has become more aware of his vision or her vision, they need to take the organization with them. And often entrepreneurs get to a point where they now need to, you were talking about earlier, there's this business, there's music and business, and the two often bang each other, because you can do music for so long, but if you're not aware of the business, and sometimes the business goes a little bit against the founder. And so you can put systems in place to manage the conflict, to manage the paradoxes that come along there.
It's really, really rich, because as you were saying that, the thing that jumped at me from a soul perspective is that for me, I often talk about three things that are really important. One's intention. What's the intention that I have? What's the energy of that? What's that I'm actually wanting to do? Well, then what? And this is, I guess, for the system bit. Then what's the input and the integrity? Am I working with integrity around this thing? And then what is the impact? For me, I think ultimately the impact is in a way that success, but equally is how I go about it. But it's how I go about it. Yeah, and I think that, and for me, they all intertwine. That then, am I operating with integrity? Am I attuned? Is therefore those inputs that I need to be successful putting in? Am I actually doing those particular things? And then to check in with that particular impact. So, I guess we realise all of these things kind of intertwine. What I'm hearing is that there's an invitation of whoever I am, whether I am a business owner, whether it is I'm a manager, whether I'm a chief executive, to be mindful about the soul, because the organisation has a soul. There's the clients have a way of being. I need to be mindful about that, but I also need to be aware systemically. For me, this is a consciousness raising series of talks.
Yes.
I mean, I wonder if we begin to wrap up, Julie, your take on this.
I think my what I would like to say in closing in terms of success is that first of all, understand what it is you mean by success. So what is success? And know that there are many facets to success. So, paying the bills might be a measurement of success, but I suspect that paying the bills might be a short-term measure. There's something bigger that you want to achieve in the longer term. So think about the bigger things. And yes, paying the bills is part of that. And so understand your context. And sometimes it's difficult to understand your context, but just understand your context. And then work from that and say, if this is what I'm trying to achieve in the long term, what do I have to do in the shorter term and the shorter term? And align all of those measures, align all of those activities that you're doing so that you can achieve, there's a better chance of you achieving success.
I really like that. And I'm just thinking by way of wrap up, and the thing that I think has been brilliant about speaking to you about these things, it's made me think of about a phrase that I often talk about, adopt the attitude of an athlete, study your field, master your craft, give 100%. And so on, and gather your team and those supporters. But I was thinking about it like as a swimmer, the great thing is swim might know they want to win the gold medal, but then those systems and those processes are there, and they kind of appreciate the times, the technique, and so on, and that they can then begin to enjoy both the clarity about the outcome, and also the inputs, and also all those measures and the systems and the processes that go along the way, rather than seeing those things that they're contradictory. It's about, for me, there's something about appreciating that broader environment, be it my own environment. We talked about the body's ecosystem, or the way I'm going out in the traffic, and as being aware of the cars and the roads and everything else. For me, it's about that raised consciousness of realizing that there is there is the soul, and there are these systems. So I like the fact that actually, for me, from a soul perspective, that then even the words, that system that might otherwise seem thingy, I realise that, of course, but there's a system.
Exactly.
There's a system, and there's a heartbeat. We might call it different things, but it's that, and it's about the awareness of that, so I can begin to put those things in place, or to get the support that I need, or realise that I play a part and I can't do it all myself. So for me, that would be my wrap up from today.
Exactly, and I think what I'd like to suggest to you is that once we've got some feedback from all these videos, so please do give us some feedback, that we're going to dive into some of the specifics. So we start talking, we've been talking generally about things, and we're talking about general conversations. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to take a whole 20-minute session and dive into what is...
A topic you might be interested in. Leadership.
Yeah.
Okay,
Viability.
Viability. Okay, how do you acquire more customers, blah, 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 blah. There might be all sorts of those themes.
How do you solve a problem?
Right.
How do you solve the right problem? All those things.
Just to kickstart that, can you just tell me what are the problems that people tend to come to you as a management consultant or business consultant with? Can you just fire out some of those things that the common one? Because people might think, that topic.
So often what happens is there are staffing problems. So people, it might be an attitude problem, it might be a productivity problem, there might be, often it's about, the staff don't know what they're doing. Things are just ineffective or inefficient. So people are saying our profitability is down, but we think we're doing all the right things. Or sometimes what happens is things are missing. So not just not from a theft point of view, but things that people don't feel fulfilled, or the leader saying, look, I'm really just not getting the results I need, and problems. And obviously there are other problems when there's theft in a company. That's always a problem.
Yes.
Or when a whole bunch of people suddenly leave,
right?
You know, or a whole bunch of people revolt and tell the leader they don't like the leader anymore, as has happened in political parties.
Right.
Well, those are all sorts of problems where some systemic thinking can help people co-create a solution to the problem.
I like that. Again, there might be themes you might be interested to talk about. Some of the things that I throw out, these words like heart and some of these intangibles. Maybe there are some of those things that people are wanting to explore. But Julia, thank you very much for your insight, your expertise.
Fantastic, and I'm looking forward to us getting into some of the very specifics of this.
Yeah, please do tell us your thoughts, and thank you very much for tuning in.
Good, thank you very much. Cheers.
Bye-bye.